you struggle to give your photos that extra pop, that extra punch that just gets the viewer's attention? If you feel like you're constantly trying to do things to get more life out of your photos, to get more pop out of them, and it just never seems to work, or you get done with it and you look back and you're like, yeah, this is just way over edited. I just killed this photo with how much editing I applied to it. If you're having any of these struggles, thinking anything like this, stick with me because I'm going to give you 6 tips today to make your photos pop without them being over edited. Hey everyone, welcome into Magnolia Photography SC. I'm Jeff House, wildlife photographer in Charleston, South Carolina. Quick video for you today. I know so many photographers out there who struggle with feeling like their images are boring. They kind of feel like they're a little bit lifeless. They're trying to figure out, how do I get more pop out of my photos? How do I get more punch out of my photos? I want to grab that viewer's attention. I want something that looks really good. Well, we're not going to go through a full editing process today, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you 6 things that I do to my photos that give them that little extra punch once we go through the entire editing process. So we're going to take a look at those 6 steps, and I want to say, and I really want to preface this, that it doesn't matter what photo editing program you're using. You can use these 6 steps across any photo editor. So that is just an added bonus. I, of course, will be in DxO Photolab. It doesn't mean you have to be using that program. Again, use whatever program you are using. All of these features are going to exist in whatever program you're currently using to edit your raw file photos. So that being said, guys, let's jump into DxO and take a look at my 6-step process. All right, so we are in DxO, and what we are looking at here is a picture of a yellow-crowned night heron out on the creek early morning, and he is doing his thing that he likes to do where he searches for some crabs to eat. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and do a quick crop of my photo, right? I want to fine tune my composition here. Now, what was going through my mind when I took this shot was there's those marsh grasses in the background, which I really love. I just love that element in the photo. You know, he's got a cool little reflection in the calmness of the creek water here. We got some of the oyster beds in the background going on. Some are a little bit more in focus. Others are drifting out of focus. I just like everything we have kind of going on here. Now, I shot this one a little differently, and I placed my subject just a little further right in the frame than I typically would. Reason being is I wasn't sure how much of those green grass marshlands there, I wasn't sure how much I wanted to include or exclude in the final image. So I shot it in a way that will allow me a little bit more flexibility with the cropping process. So just wanted to share what was going through my head when I took this image. So the first thing I'm going to do is crop this. So I'm going to bring up the cropping box here inside of DxO. And I'm going to choose the 7:5 aspect ratio. That is just one that I really like. And I'm just going to crop this image to where I kind of like it. Because I want to get these grass elements in here. And my thought process here is, see these twigs coming up in the back here, right? Way over here on the left side of the frame. I don't really want to cut into those. I feel like I want to include those as much as possible, because then I feel like I've got a nice kind of amount of that grass going on in the background with my subject. And then I can just slide it over, and I'll just bring that up and do something a little bit like that. So again, we're not doing a heavy crop here. And you'll remember from the recent video I just did on composition, right? Sometimes we overcrop. Sometimes we rely too much on cropping for our composition. So really what we want to try to do is try to compose our images as nearly as possible to the final composition that we want. As you can see, and like I just said, I didn't fully do that because I wasn't sure exactly what I might want to include or exclude here. So I gave myself a little wiggle room. So I'm just going to bring this over, and I'm just going to finalize that, and I'm just going to leave it right here. And I like this crop. I like how this looks because the bird isn't looking completely off to the right side of the frame, right? The bird is kind of looking down and a little bit to the right. So essentially what we've done is if we were to follow his eye line, it's pretty much going to take us down into this right-hand corner, right? So I kind of like this. I think this creates a really well-balanced and solid looking image. Now, the next thing that we need to do, or the next thing that I'm going to do to really bring some pop to my image, is I'm going to manage the noise levels. Now, this isn't an overly noisy image. And if I zoom in here, we can kind of see the noise going on right here. I'll zoom in a little further, right? We got some noise going on a little bit here, but it's not horrible, right? This is not a horrific photo as far as that goes, but I still want to manage the noise, and I'm going to still apply DxO's noise reduction because it does such a good job of cleaning the noise and preserving and highlighting some of the details in our subject. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click on the Deep Prime 3, which is their latest version of their noise reduction. And now if we look at that, what a difference, right? Even though we didn't have a ton of noise, it's still noticeable that we had it, and it's noticeable that it's gone. But look at the detail that we've still preserved on our bird. Fantastic. So that is step 2 of bringing our photo to a nice stage where it's going to pop. The third thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the contrast on the photo. Now, I look at contrast 2 different ways in my photo, and this is one of the newer things that I do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first look at contrast from a global perspective. And of course, globally means anything we do is affecting the entire image, right? Not just a part, but the entire image. And what I've been doing recently, because I kind of like what it does to some of the background elements, is I'm not adding contrast, but I'm reducing it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to start with the contrast here. See, if I go to the right, see what happens? Yeah, it brings a little bit of sharpness in, but look at the background elements for me, right? It's kind of making them more sharp and bringing a little bit more detail. I kind of want to add to the blurriness of those backgrounds a little bit. So in an effort to further enhance the blurriness of them, I'm going to reduce my contrast. And yes, this is reducing the contrast as a whole. Now, with the first contrast, I'm just going to usually bring it down to somewhere around -10. And then if we go to the micro contrast, you can see that this, if I go to the right, it's really bringing in a lot more detail. But I'm going to bring this one down, and I usually bring this one down to somewhere around -20 or 25, because I just think it helps to soften that background. Just helps to kind of give the photo the appearance of having a little bit more of that background blur going on. And then lastly, we got the fine contrast. This one doesn't work quite the same as the micro. It's a little bit more subtle, but I'm going to bring this one down also to about -10 or so. And that's where I'm going to leave the contrast for right now. Now, again, I'm going to revisit contrast, but I'm going to revisit this contrast on a local adjustment, and we'll get to that in a second. I want to complete one more step in the global adjustments, and that is our color management. Now, I've shared this before on the channel with you. When I used to edit my photos in Lightroom Classic, I very rarely touched the saturation slider in Lightroom, because saturation was something that really changed how much your colors appeared, right? It really had a big impact very quickly, and it was very easy to make your colors look oversaturated. And so what I would do is I would barely even touch the saturation slider. If I touched it at all, I would really use the vibrancy slider in Lightroom Classic to give my colors a boost. So that would be one thing that I would caution you to. If you often feel like your colors are becoming a little bit ridiculous, a little nuclear in tones, right? And things just start to look overdone, back off on any saturation you might be adding if you're doing that. So again, work with your vibrancy slider in Lightroom Classic, but in DxO, I have found it to be really just the opposite. I use the saturation slider in DxO, and I use the vibrancy slider a lot less. And I find that that gives me those really beautiful, rich colors that I'm looking for out of my photos. And this is what I consider a big step in my process for giving me photos that pop. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come over here to the saturation, and I'll usually bring it right up to around plus 40. And look at the difference in that already, right? That makes a pretty big difference here in our colors from going from 0 to 40. And I might even go up to like 45. I'll bring it back down to 40. I like that a little better. And then what I'm going to do with my vibrancy is I'm going to usually keep this somewhere between 1 and 5. And I'll usually hang around 3 or 4 a lot of the times. But that is where I'll typically go in and just set my color. Now, I love this, right? I love the greens that are coming from the grasses in the background. I love the colors that we're getting from this yellow-crowned heron. And I love how we have those reflections in the water with the bird and the grasses. I just think it looks great. And I think the colors are popping, but they look natural. They don't look fake. They haven't crossed that line. All right, now we're going to go into the global adjustments. And this is the 5th step for making the photos pop. And this is that contrast that I was talking about. So what I'm going to do here in DxO, I'm going to go up to the adjustment options, the adjustment tools, local adjustment tools. And I'm going to click on the brush with the A. This is what is referred to as an auto mask. So what this is going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to highlight my subject. And this tool is pretty cool because I don't need to be overly careful about painting in the bird. This has an edge detection built into it. So it's really going to go a long way as far as helping me. And I'm only doing a contrast adjustment. So even if it were to go over the lines just a little bit, not a big deal. So I'm just going to quickly highlight my bird. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to the contrast and I'm going to work on the micro contrast because I find this gives a little bit more punch than the normal contrast. And I'm going to bump this up, and I usually bring this right up to around 50. And then I'm going to close that out. So what we did here, right, in the global adjustments is we reduced the contrast a little bit. But then I'm going to come back in here to the local adjustment, and I'm going to add contrast, but just to the subject. That means we've accomplished our full goal here, right? I wanted to reduce the global contrast to keep that background soft, but I don't want my subject to be soft or appear smooth. So we add the contrast back in that local adjustment so that we can target our subject. All right, the 5th and final step, and this is one of my favorites. I showed this in a video a long time ago. You may not have seen it, but if you haven't, I think you might like this one a lot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to the local adjustment tools, and this time I'm going to use the brush next to the one with the A. This is just a regular paintbrush that you can use to add a mask. And then I'm going to zoom in here on our eye, and I'm going to click the plus sign to add that. And I'm just going to change, I'll zoom back out a little bit and maybe change my brush size a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start with the color around the eye, and I'm just going to put a mask on this color. Again, doesn't have to be exactly perfect, just close, but I'm going to do that. And I'm just going to bump up the exposure a little bit. Okay. Just going to give that just a little bit, right? See what I did there? It just gave a little brightness, a little pop to that eyeball. And then I might go down and I might even add a little yellow here just to make it a little bit richer as far as the color goes. And I like that. And then I'll close that so we can kind of see how that looks. Now, if I were to go up here and click off, that's what the eye looked like before. That's what it looks like now. Before, now. So you can see, not a huge difference, right? But there's a little brightness. Color's got a little richer. It's looking pretty good. Then lastly, I'm going to do that brush again. I'm going to add another one. And I don't really need to do this on this photo, and I really wouldn't, but I'm just going to go through the step to show you what else you can do. If you're getting some soft edges on the actual pupil, I'll just do that. And then I'll just bring down the blacks ever so slightly just to give that pupil a little bit more definition. And if you have those softer edges, that can help to give them a little bit more definition, and that will give the eye appearance of having a little bit more focus. So if you get just a little bit of soft focus on your image, this is a good way to give the appearance of having better focus than you actually got. Now I'm just going to zoom back out and we can look at this photo as a whole. And there you go, guys. That is it. Those are 5 things, or I should say 6 things, 6 things that I do to give my photos more pop. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel while you're here. If you're interested in DxO, I highly recommend you check it out. You can do a 30-day free trial. And don't forget, I always have the discount code below if you're interested in making a purchase of DxO. Just use my discount code Magnolia at the time of checkout, and that will save you 15% off on any of your orders. Hey guys, thank you so much for stopping by and spending time with me. I appreciate it. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care.